It was a cold and stormy night when I found myself stranded on a desolate country road. My car had broken down, and there was no sign of help in sight. Rain pelted the ground, and thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. My only option was to seek shelter, and that's when I stumbled upon the seemingly abandoned mansion that would change my life forever. The mansion stood at the end of a long, winding driveway, hidden behind overgrown trees and shrubs. It loomed like a dark, ancient sentinel against the backdrop of the stormy night. Desperation compelled me to approach the imposing wrought iron gates, their rusted bars creaking open as if inviting me in. As I made my way up the long, cobblestone path, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The mansion had an eerie, forgotten quality, as if it had been left to decay for centuries. But the flickering lights in the windows suggested that someone still dwelled within its walls. I reached the heavy wooden door, its surface marred by age and neglect. I knocked, the sound echoing through the cavernous entrance hall. Moments passed, and I began to doubt whether anyone would answer. Just as I was about to turn away and brave the storm once more, the door creaked open. Before me stood a man who appeared to be in his 50s, his face pale and drawn, his eyes shrouded in shadows. He regarded me with a curious, almost sinister smile. "Ah, a traveler in need," he said in a voice that sent a shiver down my spine. "Please, come in. We've been expecting you." Relief washed over me as I stepped inside, grateful to be out of the storm. The entrance hall was grand but filled with an odd assortment of antique furniture and peculiar artifacts. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and decay. The man introduced himself as Mr. Beaumont and welcomed me to his home. He explained that the mansion had been in his family for generations and that he and his relatives were the sole inhabitants of this secluded estate. As he led me through the mansion's dimly lit corridors, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The walls were adorned with unsettling paintings, distorted, nightmare-esque images of grotesque figures and surreal landscapes. The flickering candlelight cast eerie, dancing shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Mr. Beaumont led me to a lavishly decorated dining room, where a long table was set for a feast. The aroma of the food was intoxicating, and my stomach rumbled with hunger. But as I took my seat, I noticed that the other guests, strange, pallid individuals who appeared to be just as eccentric as my host, watched me with unnerving intensity. Throughout the meal, the conversation turned peculiar. Mr. Beaumont and his guests spoke in cryptic riddles and made unsettling references to things that I couldn't comprehend. It was as if they were part of some secret world, one that existed on the fringes of reality. As the evening wore on, I began to feel increasingly trapped within the mansion's walls. Mr. Beaumont insisted that I stay the night, as the storm showed no signs of abating. I reluctantly agreed, my fear of the storm outside outweighing my unease about my hosts. Mr. Beaumont led me to a lavishly decorated guest room, its walls adorned with more unsettling paintings. He assured me that I would be safe and comfortable for the night and that his family would take care of me. Alone in the dimly lit room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The unsettling paintings seemed to come to life, their grotesque figures moving and writhing in the flickering candlelight. I felt a sense of foreboding, as if I had walked into a nightmare from which I could not awaken. As I lay in the ornate bed, the mansion's strange inhabitants continued their cryptic conversations in the corridors outside. Their voices were hushed, but their words sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't understand what they were planning, but I knew it could not be for my benefit. My unease grew into a paralyzing fear as I realized that I was not the first traveler to seek refuge in this mansion. In the darkness, I could hear whispers of those who had come before me, their voices filled with despair and terror. With a growing sense of urgency, I knew I had to escape the mansion before I became another victim of its sinister inhabitants. I crept out of my room and made my way through the labyrinthine corridors, the flickering candlelight casting long, eerie shadows. I stumbled upon a hidden door, concealed behind a tapestry in the hallway. With trembling hands, I pushed it open and found myself in a dark, narrow passage. It led me to a hidden chamber, where I discovered a collection of journals, accounts from travelers who had suffered a similar fate. The entries told of bizarre rituals, of guests who had vanished without a trace, and of a malevolent force that seemed to feed on the fear and suffering of those who sought refuge in the mansion. It was a place of darkness and madness, and I knew I had to escape before it claimed me as well. I retraced my steps, making my way back to the guest room to retrieve my belongings. But as I opened the door, I was met with a chilling sight: the mansion's inhabitants, standing in a circle around the room, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Mr. Beaumont turned to me, his sinister smile widening. "You were never meant to leave, my dear guest," he said in a voice that sent shivers down my spine. In that moment, I realized the true nature of the mansion's inhabitants. They were not eccentric or misunderstood, they were something far more sinister, something that existed on the fringes of reality, feeding on the fear and suffering of those who crossed their path. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and fled down the darkened hallway, my heart pounding with terror. The mansion seemed to come alive around me, its walls shifting and closing in as if to trap me within its nightmarish embrace. I reached the front door, the storm still raging outside, and with all my strength, I pushed it open and stumbled out into the rain. Behind me, I could hear the anguished cries of the mansion's inhabitants, their voices filled with rage and despair. As I ran through the storm, I knew I had narrowly escaped the clutches of the Mansion of Shadows. It was a place of darkness and madness, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. And though I had made it out alive, I could never erase the memory of those haunting, malevolent eyes, watching me from the darkness of the mansion.